Order this regularly scheduled commission meeting of the Lynn Haven Commission on October 10th, 2017. At this time, I would like to call on Commissioner Barnes to open our meeting with an invocation. If you would please stand.
Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for the many blessings that you bestowed upon us. And dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for being a part of this meeting, and we pray and ask that you will help us to help and guide us and help us to make the decisions that will affect the city. And Lord, we pray for our troops overseas. We pray and ask that you will comfort them, that you will be with them. Please protect them from all hurt, harm, and danger. God, we love you and we praise you. And it's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Item 3 on this afternoon's agenda is the mayor's report. I had a few things I wanted to share with you. First of all, everyone in town is so excited about the improvements at Sheffield Park with the playground. And I had come out the other day and just took a small video of the park. And there have already been 1,000 views on Facebook of that little park, and the children have just been out there nonstop, so it's going to be very much appreciated. And I just wanted to remind everyone, Ben Jonke has worked very hard on the park, our CRA director, as well as our former employee, Linda Lucanti, who was very instrumental in bringing about the grant money, which made it possible. So that's that second phase, and we'll be including the stage very soon, hopefully by the end of the year, and then moving forward into the next phase. So it's just a really exciting time in Lynn Haven, especially for the children right now. There will be a ribbon cutting for that park on October 17th at 9 a.m., and the children of Lynn Haven will be very involved in the ceremony, so we're very excited about that. It's still going on until 5 o'clock, but our city manager had the idea of having a blood drive in Lynn Haven to support hurricane relief in the state of Florida, and that is happening today. It has been all day, and then it'll be again on the 17th. And just want to commend our fire chief, John DeLange, for the beautiful American flag out there. It's just a beacon, and everybody in the city has been commenting about it, how beautiful it is, and it kind of makes a statement for who we are here. And then I'm sure that all of you agree with me that we were so lucky this past week with Hurricane Nate and the way that all came out. And so once again, our community was spared. And then finally, this afternoon, the commission members went to Oak Tree Building's open house. It's another business here in Lynn Haven that the CRA was supporting with the incentive money, and they have a beautiful building over there if you haven't seen it on 390 in the corner of Illinois. And then I posted on Facebook and then also put it in the Lynn Haven Ledger. Many residents have asked over and over about our boards becoming more active in Lynn Haven, and I see the Navarrettes are here with us this evening, and they are some of the residents, if you don't mind my saying that, who've been very interested and very kind to want to volunteer and help with the community. So the Leisure Services Board and the Beautification Boards have not been meeting for a very long time, and those positions have not been filled. And so just in a way of getting that jump started, I've asked that at the next commission meeting, an hour before, if those who are interested in serving on one of these boards, if you would just come and meet with me here at this building and fill out applications, and then we could have those applications ready for the board to look at and possibly approve at that meeting. So,
Could you add also any other people who want to serve on the CRA or any boards?
Yes. Those are the two boards that have been very inactive, but our other boards, we've lost some members, the CRA board, planning board, any boards that you would be interested in coming forward to serve. It's all about the more that our citizens and residents are involved, the more that you're going to have a voice in how the city moves forward. So it's very important for everyone to be a part of it. So I invite you an hour before, that'll be 5 o'clock, at the fourth Tuesday meeting. If you'll just meet here with the mayor, we'll have those applications for you. And then I've also had some opportunity this week to discuss by email and phone with Chris Forehand some plans to get the splash pad over in Kensall Park moving. We're very excited about that, and we even talked about a tentative spring break date of having it open. So very exciting times. And my newest addition to being mayor, purchased a little scooter. I can't get in too much trouble. It only runs 35 miles per hour, but it gets me all around Lynn Haven, and I've been pulling up in people's driveways and saying hello and talking, and I just really love it. So your mayor is now a motorcycle mama, so I'm just kidding. So that's the end of the mayor's report for this evening, and I'll pass it over to Commissioner Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. I've only got a couple of things. It's been a fairly quiet couple of weeks for me. Obviously, the blood drive was a big thing, and I went, first time I've ever given blood, and painless. So any of you haven't done it, please consider going and giving blood. I'd like to thank the police chief and the fire chief. For those of y'all don't know, they have a friendly competition going on between their departments to determine who can donate the most blood. And last I had heard, I think the police or the fire department was ahead, but I don't know the results at the moment. So thank you both for that. I'd also like to thank Amanda Richards. I had a city resident come to me about a piece of property that they were worried about zoning, and had some questions and didn't know how to handle the process, but we were able to unfortunately find out the property was not in the city limits, and because of its location, we can't annex it into the city. So he's now dealing with the county, unfortunately. And that's all I've got, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Commissioner Tender?
Yes. Well, I attended the cruise-in last Saturday night down in Florida. It was a huge success. Families, it was amazing how many people were there. The people that brought their vehicles said they would love to do it as often as we would have them. They said everybody was so respectful. I think they had to get after one skateboarder, but that's not bad for 3 hours like that. So it was a real big success, and I hope, too, that we do it again. I had a customer, it was actually one of my customers that came to me. She gets everywhere on one of these hover-rounds. It's a mobility device. She pointed out to me that if she comes up the curb on 9th in Florida, she cannot get down if she goes a block down. There are no ramps there, the yellow ramp that allows those devices down. So I'd like us to do a study and see where we need more of these ramps.
I've already checked into that. One thing about that area, it is grandfathered in. To put a ramp there, I got with Ben, it's about $7,500.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell her to go around. Anyway, that was one of her concerns. Then we had a meeting with the family from Colorado Avenue. It was very successful. We met with Chris and Bobby, city manager, and myself and the family. Anyway, we're doing some work for them, and they have easement issues, that they have easement right to the edge of the road. So the city has agreed to bore under the road for infrastructure issues and things of that nature, and they're going to firm up the sides of what I'd call a bridge. I don't know what you all call it, that little waterway there. But I think they're happy with what we've come up with, and that was very successful. I also have talked to a gentleman that lives on Virginia Avenue. The past city manager had made an arrangement about pipes, the cost of the pipe versus the labor to have the pipe put in his ditch. The front of his house faces 9th Street, but his address is actually Virginia. There's a full sidewalk there, and that's where his driveway used to be. So he can't park over the sidewalk. He's been fined for that, and so on and so forth. So city is going to take care of that, and we're going to get his...
It's already taken care of.
It's already done.
Yes.
Really? Awesome.
The agreement's done.
Oh, the agreement's done, but the work's not done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, you scared me. I thought, well, how could you do that overnight? I go by there 10 times a day.
We're that good.
Wonderful, yeah, okay, well, great, that's good news too. And then the only other thing I talked to a lady about, and this really concerns me, and she was a senior citizen. Her and her husband walked the walking bridge every day in the morning, and they see my truck there, and they thought it was me. I said, you'll never see me out on the walking bridge, but somebody from the restaurant does walk every morning. She was walking along the side of the cement, and her leg was impaled by a treble hook, fishing hook, that somebody had stuck in the side of the cement. It cost her a trip to the ER, and needless to say, it was kind of painful. And so I would really like us to discuss something about getting somebody, even if it's one individual from a department, to walk that bridge with a shovel and whatever they need, because dog waste is still a big issue.
We do every day, and
You do?
yes, ma'am, and I will have him start looking for hooks.
Hook finder, I love it. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnes?
Yes, the last several weeks I've been riding around Lynn Haven, and I don't know if many of you have noticed or not, but there seems to be shopping carts in ditches and just hanging around and all over. And I would like for this commission to task the city manager to meet with the managers of the various supermarkets and places where we see all this, and see if perhaps you can talk to them and let them know our concerns about these shopping carts. Some of them stays in ditches for weeks at a time, and I know that when they have to buy new carts, of course, they pass the cost on to the consumer. And maybe if we need to come up with some sort of fine system or something of that nature, give them an opportunity to self-correct, it would be nice. But, you know, to see all these carts around, it's kind of nerve-wracking, especially when we're trying to clean up our city. And I also had the opportunity with other commissioners to attend the Oakwood presentation this afternoon. We presented them with a check for $5,000, and it is a very nice facility, so if you have an opportunity, go by and take a look at it. It's the corner of 14th and Illinois Avenue, and they've done a fantastic job in remodeling that building. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Friend?
Thank you, Mayor. Yep, that was a great presentation. It's a great program. I was something very proud of as a commission that we passed that and seen several businesses take advantage of that, and that's a great business to keep in Lynn Haven. Also went by the car show. It looked like it was a great turnout despite the rain. I know a buddy of mine, or his wife, and she's a buddy as well, I guess. But anyway, she had her Camaro in there, and they seemed to have a good time. But also, I appreciate the mayor passing on my information, or through the staff. I'll be attending for the Walmart ribbon cutting on October the 19th. They've got a new app for shopping online, and so they're going to be doing a ribbon cutting for that. I think the mayor's going to be out of town, so I'll be doing that as Mayor Pro Tem on that. So invite everybody out to that on October the 19th. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And they got a hold of you in a hurry for the Walmart shopping. That's pretty cool. And I'll be out of town next week for just a couple of days. I'm going to visit with my two granddaughters who now live in Florida, so it's about a 4-hour drive, so I get a chance to see them occasionally. I did leave out one item that I wanted to come back and revisit, if I may, on the mayor's report. Over on Illinois Avenue, a lot of the residents have been working very hard to clean up that street and to improve the appearance of the yards, and I've had several of them call me and comment on one neighbor, Mr. and Mrs. Metras, who live at 1500 Illinois, to tell me what a great job they had done in renovating this yard, and it is quite beautiful. And the suggestion was made that I have a mayor's yard of the month. So I went to Office Depot and had the sign made and went out and presented that to them as the mayor's yard of the month. And I'm going to start doing that each month, and also, you know, take a little gift with it. And I'm hoping that once the beautification board is in effect, that maybe, I'm just saying this so the rest of the commission can hear me saying it and let you be thinking about it, because I'm going to ask city manager if he could maybe put it on the agenda, that maybe we have the beautification board offer a Lynn Haven City of the Month, Yard of the Month, And then also, we have had in years past a Citizen of the Year, which has kind of gone by the wayside. But I'd like to see those, come back. And the Yard of the Month, I'm hoping that maybe the commission would consider that whoever wins that each month, that we would give them free utilities for the month. That's what I'm hoping we might consider doing. And I think that would go sort of hand in hand with what Commissioner Barnes was just saying about, the ditches and some of that cleanup, that if people realized, it's kind of a small thing, but not, it's a great, it'd be really great just to shred that water bill that month and the trash bill and all that for having the most beautiful yard and or showing the most improvement. So anyway, that's the end of the mayor's report, and I'll pass on now item number 5 to the city manager.
Okay, Mayor. First thing I'd like to do is recognize the Employee of the Month. If Chris Horst would meet me up front, please. Okay, last meeting, I was tasked to come back to the commission about the property behind us, which is 809 Pennsylvania Avenue, property acquisition. We have received a
Appraisal.
thank you, appraisal on the property. Unfortunately, the property does not appraise for what is asking price. I've went through the realtor many, many times, probably about 4 or 5 times today. The owner is in California, and they have reduced the price to $140. It does have a renter at the rent of $800 a month that could continue. The appraisal come back, the property is worth $126,000. So there is a difference between the cost of what it's worth versus what the appraisal report come back and what they're asking. So I will need some direction on that if y'all still want to look at moving forward or not moving forward with acquiring this property as a future part of the government complex.
My thought is maybe a counter offer. I don't know what others are.
I've made 4 of them today.
Oh, okay.
So you've made 4 counters?
Today alone, not counting the times before. I think they're counting on that rent money to help offset some of their costs of living. So I think that's part of it. And according to the realtor, he just will not come off.
I don't think we need to pay any more than what it's appraised for. So, I mean.
Yeah, I agree. Who did the, excuse me, by the way, who did the appraisal?
Giles.
Giles, yeah, good group.
Commissioner Russell, any thoughts?
Yeah, what was the original asking price?
Original asking price was $144.
And they're down to 140?
140, and the appraisal come back at 126.
2026, so it's 14,000 over appraisal.
Yes.
So what's the time frame do you think we will make use of the property?
It would be a
2
while,
years?
at least, or
At
more.
least, so at $800 a month, that's $9,600 a year. 2 years, that's more than enough to cover the difference in the cost. So as long, if we bought the property at the 140, kept it rented at the $800, in effect, we'd be paying 126
Yes.
or less. So I would suggest buying the property because it's going to do nothing but go up, in my opinion.
Commissioner Tender, any thoughts?
I do have some thoughts. The numbers all sound great, but if we were to buy it and the city owned it, then we're responsible for the air conditioning and the heat and keeping the upgrade of keeping it up to snuff so that we can rent it out, right?
Yes, ma'am. It'll be a government owned building, just like we rent a lot of buildings out. You know, like the Nation's building we've been doing for years. So it'd just be another rental piece of property we own. You're talking about almost a little over a half an acre of property that could potentially connect here, and we could do parking. You know, one of the things we've thought about is more parking around City Hall. I do know there is a difference in the cost associated between the appraisal and what it's worth. I do agree with Commissioner Russell. I think the property will continue going up. Will we need it in the time frame of this board? I don't know the answer to that, but we always have to look forward to the future and what we need to do for the future of Lynn Haven.
And is this the property right across the street?
It's down the other way.
It's,
Back this way?
yeah.
It's
right
one
here.
house. It's an adjacent property to this. Yes.
And, I'd like to also add, we're constantly watching the property that's in foreclosure and tied up in some estate on the corner as well.
Well, I would concur with what Commissioner Russell said, and the reason I would is because even though, and certainly with great respect to Commissioner Tender's comments about the upkeep of the property, but once it becomes, the city's building, it can be part of the city's maintenance. It's not like we would have to go and hire someone to come and fix things there. It would be part of the cities that we could do that. And the other thing is Lynn Haven is going to continue growing, I think, at an exponential rate, and that's a good thing for all of us. And the fact that we could rent this property and that will eventually, within a very short time, make up the difference in the appraised value. These two pieces of property are going to be, I think, a big part of the future of the city. Even if, we decide at some point down it will be long after this commission's not sitting here, but I think that it's very important that we always have that forward vision, the future vision of what the city will be, because I was just thinking, my dad was a commissioner here in 1992, and he would not recognize the city right now. I mean, how much it's changed in that, the 20-so-year period. So to think about what it will look like in another 15 or 20 years, and in my opinion, we're going to need that property. So that's my thoughts.
The city, some years ago, probably before I became a commissioner, and so that was 1996, the city bought 600 acres of property, never had it appraised, bought the property, and we never used the property. And I don't see, in my opinion, if we pay what they're asking for, and it's only appraised at $126,000, I just don't. And if we bought it, I would rather see it used as parking because we need the parking around here. I just don't see with that property over there where we would actually get our money back. I mean, the city did at the time, spent an ungodly amount of money for 600 acres, and we've never recouped our money back. So that's just my opinion. So.
And with all due respect to that comment, I think it's like comparing apples to oranges. That property has been used in some ways for waste disposal after Hurricane Opal. We've sold a portion of it. We sold it way below what the city paid for it. But past mistakes don't necessarily need to determine what we do in the future to move forward. That's just my thought.
But I also think past mistakes don't need to be a habit, and I don't think we need to do that again.
Well, I'll just say that 600 acres, I think, was the biggest debacle ever, but this is adjacent property, almost contiguous to the city hall, so that's just my thought.
I have a question, Mayor. Did the owners of this building approach us, or is it on the market?
It's on the market.
Have they had any other people interested in it?
I don't know.
Do you know how long it's been on the market?
About a month, 45 days maybe, if that.
So what's the pleasure of the commission? So we're sort of in the middle of the city manager's report. This is not an item for voting, but he's brought it up. So we've had some positive and some. Do we want to give this some more time? Give the city manager direction to maybe give it another week or two and make another offer, or somebody make a proposal for direction for our city manager, please.
Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that we put this off for 2 more weeks and see if we can get it closer to the appraised value before we buy it. I agree with buying it. I think it's very necessary, but I also think it should be a little bit cheaper.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor that we would consider keeping this property on our radar, but waiting 2 more weeks to see what it looks like at the next commission meeting before any decision is made one way or the other. Is there a second for that motion?
Mayor, I'm good with that, and I'll second that motion.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. Is there any comment from the public before we? This is not an agenda item, but we did make a motion and a proposal so we can decide. Okay. Then at this time, Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Tender?
Yes?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so we will keep that idea floating for a little while. You want to continue with your report now?
Yes, ma'am. I do apologize.
No problem.
Improvements around City Hall, I know that y'all have seen a lot of changes, and a lot of the citizens have seen a lot of changes. We're in the process of giving the City of Lynn Haven government complex area actual identity. We have, if you notice, we've taken away all of the shrubbery, things of that nature to get ready for painting and revamping of a lot of the areas. I thought I'd share with you a couple of things that we're going to do around here. If everyone look at the new signs we have posted around town, it says library, City Hall. The body of that sign, that's the color of the buildings will be. and some of the awnings are going to be a little different. We're going to tie in a lot of the terracotta look of the Spanish style of City Hall, the 1920s era. The library itself will be added on to. As far as the exterior, we will frame around a lot of the windows with excuse me. Like a trim, yes. Yes, thank you. Trim, and then we'll also be changing the umbrella look. The umbrellas, some of them around doorways will be rounded. A lot of the windows will be more slant, and those will be more like a black color, black, solid black, and the ones around the doors will be black, and with that body of the sign, and also the red terracotta pinstripe in it, so it'll have a total clean look feel. The aggregate on the side of the library and also this building will be stuccoed to look like City Hall, the stucco look. So it'll all start tying together, and people will start seeing the same colors and looks. They'll know it's a government facility. Even though, the library was built in the 80s, that was built in the 20s. I don't know when this church was built, but they all have certain looks. But we're trying to tie all that together and just give it a fresh look, because it's been a long time since the buildings have been touched, and it's something overdue, and it's something y'all approved in the budget. So I look forward to getting comments from y'all and also the citizens of what how it's looking. I've already been getting a lot. Said I didn't know the City Hall the building looked good as it is, architecturally wise. So we have that. I'd like to report to you on the half-cent sales tax. We have laid about 3,250 linear foot of water lines, 400 feet of stormwater, and paved about 7 miles of road. They have really went to town on changing the look and feel of Lynn Haven. As of March through September, we have collected just a little over $1 million from the surtax. That'll give you an idea of where we're at with that. All the equipment in here, I have released the PO to change the equipment on the audio. You know as well as I do, we have a lot of issues with the audio. It's 20-something years old, so we'll be changing that. We're also looking at tying, we have contracts, RFQs out for IT and phone right now, service, to change those, which are budget items in there. Ben and I have been meeting with all the key accounts, so the large employers in the city. We've been meeting with a lot of them, seeing how the city could help assist them in their operations. We have received the Rails to Trails plan. They're 60% complete, so we'll be moving forward with that project. We also are looking at moving on with the state revolving fund loan for sewer upgrades of the 1% money, see if we can qualify, and we'll hopefully be bringing that to you. I also have issued the task order for the sewer plant permit that we have to do to make sure we're in compliance. That's moving forward. And as promised to all the citizens and to yourself, when you approved the budget, I have released the stormwater model. So you'll start seeing across town a lot of surveying, ditches, roads, stormwater drains. A lot of that will be starting in the next few weeks, hopefully. Also, we're looking at the rate studies that we spoke about. That's fixing to kick off. Start tearing the rates apart and try to understand and make sure our costs are in line where they need to be. And also, we're in the process of looking at adding another AA baseball field, the dog parks, and the splash parks. So all those items are moving forward. So we do have quite a bit of things going on in the city, and that's not counting what all the department managers are doing individually. It's been Fire Safety Month. I know Chief DeLonge has been, I don't know how many kids he's seen, a lot. 500 so far. So we are doing quite a bit in the community. And lastly, I did have a departmental change. I downsized the leisure services, and I will be acting as manager of that department as well for a while. And with that, I think the charter says I have to bring it before you for approval. And at this time, I'd like to do that.
Is there a motion for approval of Mr. White serving as the department chair for leisure services for the time being until he makes a decision as to where to go forward with that department?
So moved.
Second, sorry.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do you have a time frame that you want to do this for?
No, ma'am. I'm gonna stay at it for a while.
A while, as in 6 months?
Or longer.
Any other discussion from the board?
Yeah, I'll just use the opportunity to say I have complete and full confidence in your abilities to do it, but in part because I know a lot of the guys out there, and you got a great team to work with out there, but there's a lot of work out there.
Yes, there is, and I want to really step in and do what the citizens need. I look at leisure services as improving the quality of life for all residents of Lynn Haven, and I really want to put a lot of time and effort to bring those up to par like we are the rest of the city.
Well, again, complete confidence in your abilities to do it. I've always said that Lynn Haven, our sports complex, is the premier sports complex in all of Bay County. And I know the folks really well in Panama City, but so we got to keep that up. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, sure. Anyone else on the board? I would just make the comment that in discussion that I had with Mr. White, that he was concerned about many things at the Leisure Services Department, and part of that was our big turnover in employees. And I think that he's showing, true management skill in getting in there himself to find out what's happening and trying to find out how to fix what's been happening or how to make it better, how to improve it, how to move it forward. And so that's reality, hands-on for a manager to get into a department and actually do the work and really get in there with those employees and find out what's going on. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I also would like to say that anytime you terminate a position, somebody's losing their job. And I want to appreciate the fact of what you're doing with her severance package. Giving her a 3-month severance is a genuine, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Generous.
Generous, thank you. A generous and well probably earned, so I appreciate that.
So there's been a motion and a second and some discussion. Are there any comments from the public regarding this item before we? Yes, sir.
There is a difficulty hearing, no disrespect, but you keep turning your head away from the microphone. And
Talking to mayor or?
No.
Me?
I'm supposed to talk to the mayor, but...
No, I meant, were you telling me you couldn't hear me? I'm sorry.
I do apologize.
Okay.
I'm trying to look down, make sure no one has any questions. I apologize.
I didn't mean it to be disrespectful. I
That's
just
fine.
meant it because we missed out on something, and that's why I'm up here. Did I miss out on the portion of departmental change? You did discuss that?
That's what we're discussing.
So that's what I'm up here for. Thank you.
Yes.
I notice in the contract for the city manager, okay, it's changed a little bit, and I don't want to impose on departmental and your job with the city. You're in charge of the employees, okay? I don't want to step on that. I just want to ask a question. The previous city manager had quite a few job categories and areas he covered. Number one was CEO of the town. I noticed that in your contract, there is no reference to senior budget officer, budget and fiscal officer, or senior budget officer. I also noticed that you don't have the title of CEO. And I noticed that the only title you have is city manager and city clerk. You also do not have any deputies. And I have concern with that over the fact that if something happens to you, who takes over? For example, you change the department of one department here, and are you taking over as the manager of that department, and that is leisure services?
Is that a question? Am I? Yes, sir, I'm taking that over, day to day.
Okay. I thought I overheard there's a time frame that you're going to be looking for somebody?
There's no set time frame.
Okay, so
right now, I'm it until I decide otherwise.
Okay. So I understand correctly. So there seems to be a movement here of your departmental change. You're going to be now managing leisure services. You're going to be supervising all the employees. And Mr. Russell is correct and Mr. Friend is correct. That's a lot of workload.
I have every department now. It's nothing different.
I know that you're in charge, oversee them departments, but you have sub-managers on there. Again, my question is this: as you move through this cycle, you will be, if something, God forbid, happens to you or happens to anybody, you don't have a backup. And that is my concern. I don't care. You can overextend yourself as much as anybody else. However, your departmental changes are your business, but there is some concern of if something happens, who's going to take over?
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Is there any other comment from the public?
904 Michigan Avenue. I had actually the same concerns Mr. Walker had, or many of them, is that, number one, Judy Tinder and Mr. White are always, which is great, they're always looking to see, and did I hear, what other people are saying and thinking and making sure that they're on track, but then we can't hear them. And did I hear previously that we're upgrading the audio system?
Yes.
Yahoo. Okay. And then on the city manager taking over the leisure department, I think that is commendable, and I have the same concern about him stretching himself too thin. He has a lot of responsibilities and a lot of over the entire city, and I had my same concern. I had that concern also, and I hope that I don't know how many employees are in that. I mean, direct in the office part of there.
I will still be utilizing the individuals that are there in the maintenance department. Also, Brent, that runs the day-to-day and rec, he's still...
Right, okay.
It's just, I'll be there for their guidance, and I'll be changing a lot of things that we do out there.
Now, if I'm calling the city regarding events or, about things on Florida Avenue or whatever, who do I call?
Lauren?
Okay.
She's a special events coordinator.
Okay, she is.
Yes,
okay, that's my particular concern.
Yes, ma'am.
But I also am concerned about, and I commend you on taking over that, and I think you should probably get a pretty good grip on what's going on in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
And I do understand, and I do appreciate the concern about spreading a little thin, but I can give you some of my history. When I took over CEO of Gulf Coast Electric Co-op, I was CEO, CFO, purchasing manager, and also I was running the office. So if that'll give you an idea of my ability of running a $160-something million company on day-to-day, I think I can handle another department.
Okay, and I just wanted to add one other comment too, is I don't think that Mr. White and I discussed this pretty extensively after he decided this is what he wanted to do, and the way I understand it is he's not necessarily looking at serving as the department head of this department. I think what he's doing is investigating to see if it needs a department head. He has an events coordinator, and then he also has the ball teams and the sports field person, and then which is Brent, and then he's also has Ramona out. Ramona's actually with the police department, but she's out at the sports complex with the animal shelter. And I think that what I understand, you correct me if I'm wrong, he's just wanting to see, do we really need that position when we have all these people who are doing, like when you had an event, you called the events coordinator, that kind of thing. So I think he's just doing some very budget mindful exploration before he refills a position to see if that department will run with those two coordinators without having to have just another administrator. So that's where I'm at. Is there any further discussion from the board or the public? Okay, so we've had have we had a motion? I've forgotten all this.
Yes,
In a
there's
second.
been a motion
So
and
at this time, we're just voting to approve what Mr. White wants to go forward to do. So, Mr. White, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor?
Yes. So go forward. And then I think you had one more item on your report.
Yes, we have the drawdown of Davis Lake, and I think we have someone with us today that would like to speak to that. Bobby? Okay.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
Manager White, Attorney Jackson, how are you today? From my part here today, I was contacted by Bay County Engineering, and they said they had already spoken with the city of Lynn Haven, and apparently there's some culverts on 12th Street that are the county's responsibility. They have to do maintenance on or look inside of, when they contacted me, they said the city had referred them to the FWC if there was a way to dewater the lake. And talking with Bobby, we've been working with the city, I guess since the 80s, the early 80s on Davis Lake Drawdown, so it's not a new item. And we hadn't done one in, I guess 3 years, 2014, and it's certainly not something we need to do every year or every other year. But we don't want to fall back into the, 10 years or longer lapses, and it's really good for that little body of water to, through oxidation and drawing it down and letting it dry out is a good thing. It helps with the nuisance aquatic vegetation issues we have in there. And so talking with Bobby, I suggested that, maybe we could have sort of the state, county, and city could all work on this and see if we could help the county by proposing a winter drawdown of Davis Lake, which it needs. It's due for it anyway. And so for my part, Bobby asked if we had any issues with it biologically, and I don't. So I was going to recommend to the city that, and I have drafted a letter, but I can send that to Bobby as electronically, that we begin November 1st and go to the end of February, sort of capture those winter months. And talking with Lauren, who was going to be here. I guess Lauren's not here today. She was going to, the county engineer was coming, or Bay County engineering representative. And she asked if that was as soon as we could do it. And I just thought to keep, on good terms with the citizens and the people on Davis Lake that, I thought that was, that gives us the rest of October. They should be notified. And in the past, even working with Bob Olson and times in the past, I think, City Works has, even, put a flyer just to make sure all the residents knew it was coming, so it just didn't happen. I know there are people that have fountains and other things in the lake that it's their personal property, and you certainly wouldn't want to just pull the plug. But it's city, the structure, as you know, is city property. And so I was here today just to support Bobby and say that it's fine with us, or the FWC. And it would be, it's time and it's beneficial to the lake for the health of the system. So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I don't think I said who I was, but it doesn't really matter. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, there's been some confusion, I think, in a lot of the meetings in Bay County, but actually by statute, you do not have to identify yourself or tell where you live to speak at a meeting, so you're fine, but I did hear you say who you were. At this time, are there any questions from the board?
Yes, Mayor, if you would. I'm sorry, you want to go first? New issue to me, and it's something I haven't addressed before or had dealt with before. Is it a complete lake drawdown? If we're drawing down the lake completely, what do we do with the fish that are in the lake? And then are we going to restock the lake after we fill it back up?
Sure, if you don't mind, so that everybody can hear. Thank you, sir.
The problem with that is we haven't tried to move the fish. The fish population in there isn't substantial. There's not as, we've used this as a method because one of the issues with Davis Lake is it's very shallow overall, and in the summertime it sort of becomes a thermal issue that it reaches very high temperatures and it's lethal to fish. It can support some fish, and there's been in the past when I think before 2000, I can't remember exactly, maybe it was 2010, the city tried to net some fish out and relocate them to a retention pond, but we haven't looked at restocking it before because, again, the best management tool we have to keep the nuisance aquatic vegetation down is to draw it down. So they're going to go, we use freshwater fish and they go right into Anderson Bayou. So, and in the summertime, the possibility with algae blooms and fish kills, we've all been through that in the past and the fish kills there. So we don't really want to go down that road again. So it is a full drawdown, and the fish in there would not be an issue.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions?
I have a question for you. Like Commissioner Russell just asked, are you going to fill it back up? Will it be filled back up?
Well, I mean, after when we reach the end of our date, they would simply close the valve and it would refill. It's basically a retention pond, if you will. It receives all the surface water runoff from as far as Mosley, all the way down from the city. So it'll fill pretty quickly.
So the people who live on that lake, we call it a lake, what's that going to do to their property value? Anything? Okay.
Sure, go ahead, Bobby.
The people on the lake have gone through this several times where we've drawn it down. So it's nothing new to them.
Okay.
But you'll see a big dry empty lake for a couple months, and then once we close the valve, it'll fill right back up.
Okay, thank you.
In just a few days. Well, first couple hard rains, it'll fill right back up.
Thank you.
Years, just for the commission, the commissioners that weren't here, we've gone through this before. There's actually an MOU in place between the FWC, the city, and the property owners of the lake, because originally they came to us wanting us to draw it down because it was getting too weedy.
What is the cost of this?
Nothing. You just turn the valve, open the valve. Well, city has to open that. The drawdown structure itself is the city plan. So, the manpower hours involved.
Something for free, I love it.
And I've only been mayor for about 2.5 years, but I've had many, many complaints and requests from the property owners out there that the lake was full of algae bloom and that they needed some assistance. So I don't think this is going to be met with any resistance at all. I think everybody's going to be happy about it.
Yeah, that's right, Mayor. It receives a tremendous amount of nutrient loading through surface water runoff, and it's we can do some spot herbicide treatments in there, but it's a gray area because it's some of the restoration dollars we receive from the legislature. They have certain guidelines about size and access, public access, and although there is an easement there is a city ordinance that you can't use outboard motors and other things. So we have to be very careful about what is treated and where, because using tax dollars to treat it, and I've received calls at my offices up here at the Deer Point office, at the regional office, and about, hey, we saw you spot treating, I think you missed my yard. Well, we got to be really careful that we're not treating anyone's yard because we can't do that. But there is an existing permit where residents can always go out and, if they want to, any kind of aquatic plant permit they can get free from us. If they want to mechanically harvest more, they're free to do that. It doesn't cost anything from us. But it's our best tool there. And it helps with through drying out, and if we get some rains during the winter time, it'll help flush some of that sediment out. And it's such a small surface area. I mean, it's typically the same time it overlaps when we draw down Deer Point, and that's 5,000 surface acres. So, you know, it's not a concern with DEP, what's entering Anderson Bayou. So it's a, you know, and maybe it's a way that we could, you know, state, city, and county, and the county could get their things done. We could all, you know, kind of achieve all of our goals. Thank you.
Okay. And I would just like to ask the attorney's advice on this now. Does city manager have the authority to go forward with the drawdown, or does he need commission approval?
Actually, the city doesn't own the lake.
Right.
And that was a part of the controversy from before, who owned the lake. And actually, some of the property owners have land out into the lake. So I think as far as opening the valve, I think the city manager could probably do that on his own. I think doesn't require commission, unless you all feel like you want to validate that.
What's the pleasure of the commission, just to give him authority to go ahead? Or do you have other discussion, Commissioner Friend?
Just in the past, we've just let the city manager handle
Okay.
it. So.
All right. Then we appreciate all that good information, and we'll let Mr. Baker and Mr. White move forward then. Okay. Anything else, Mr. White? Okay. Item number 6 is our city attorney's report.
Yes, ma'am. Just one quick thing. We passed out Resolution 2017-10701, which goes along with the approval to the changes in Lynn Haven purchasing policy on the consent agenda. Those changes require a resolution to approve. That's one of our new changes from the last time we revised the policy. And so I would just recommend that resolution be read as part of the consent agenda at number 9.
Okay. Thank you so much. Anything else? That's it?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay, moving on then to the consent agenda, items 7, 8, and 9. I will go ahead and read all 3 items, and then if there's discussion, we'll get a motion and a second for all 3, and then if there is discussion or comments from the board or from the public, then we can go back and address them individually. So the consent agenda is to approve the minutes from the September 26th regular meeting. Number 8 is the approval of Greenleaf Lawn Care of Bay County LLC for the cemetery and lawn care contract for the city. And item number 9 is approval of changes to the City of Lynn Haven purchasing policy. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Excuse me, ma'am, we would need the resolution to be read.
Before we do that,
Yeah.
Thank you for interrupting. Okay. Let's, do they have to withdraw their motion now?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Who made the motion?
I did.
Okay.
I withdraw.
Thank you. And the second? Okay. So, Mr. White, would you please read the resolution?
Resolution number 2017-10-701, a resolution of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending the city's purchasing procedural guide, delegating specific authority to the purchasing officer, revising other purchasing policies, and providing an immediate effective date.
Thank you. Now is there a motion to accept 7, 8, and 9, the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the board of any of the items?
Of all 3 of these?
Any of them?
Okay, yes, I have something. The Greenleaf Lawn Care, did we get bids on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We had, I think, 5 or 6. 6 people bid on it.
Okay. And how long is that contract good for?
3 years. 4 years, I'm sorry. 4-year with a 1-year renewal option.
Are we paying them a flat fee, or do they have a agenda of what their job is?
Each job is specific, you know, so much cut City Hall, so much cut the cemeteries, and different sites.
And I can look up what we paid for that in the budget, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the public on any of these items? Okay. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes, and so the consent agenda is approved. And then moving to the old business, item number 10 is the second reading of ordinance number 1044, revising alcohol distances and restrictions on permitting for on-premises alcohol consumption, and action is required after the reading.
Ordinance number 1044, an ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending Chapter 6 of the Lynn Haven Code of Ordinances regarding alcoholic beverages, conforming the minimum distance restrictions on the sale of alcoholic beverages to match state law, restricting on-premise consumptions of alcoholic beverages to restaurants or bars, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing for an immediate effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for acceptance?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for approval of item number 10. Is there any discussion or questions from the board? Any discussion or questions from the public? Yes, sir. Mr. Walker.
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. If you're discussing 1044, it says the revising the alcohol distances and restrictions permitting on premises of alcohol consumption. What are we revising the distance? And the distance to what?
From 1,000.
Sure. If you recall earlier this year, the commission wanted to, can you hear me okay? Wanted to reduce the distances down to match state law. And when we did that, we did not include the restriction of on-premises licenses. And so we didn't adjust what this does is basically just provide exactly match state law and only has on-premises consumption for permitting. So the distances don't change itself. The only thing that changes is just on-premises versus off-premises consumption.
Okay, no disrespect, but I have to address all my questions to the chairman. When I get an answer from the side, that means commissioners do not know the answer. They vote on this. So if you don't know the answer, I don't understand how you can answer the question. Now, considering that, if you read that, it says school, it specifically says school. It also says that the City of Lynn Haven issues the alcohol license. Does the City of Lynn Haven issue alcohol licenses?
No.
My understanding is that what happens is they apply for an alcohol license with the state, and then the state has us sign off on a questionnaire as to whether it violates any of our local ordinances or not.
Again, it says in the paragraph, it insinuates, says that the City of Lynn Haven, who is doing this, issues the license.
Go ahead. That's not.
The only thing that the city signs off on, they bring us a form asking us if the business is in the correct zoning category. We have to strike through because we don't have zoning, and we put land use. And so the only thing the city signs off on is whether it's in a land use that allows alcohol sales. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. Does that address your question,
No.
or I'm still not understanding what you're asking?
No, it does not.
Okay, go ahead. I'm still
The
just...
verbiage in that says, and it's the Cities of Lynn Haven's resolution, that the city, doesn't say the city, it says, it's the city's resolution, it says issues the license. That is not what was definitive given there.
I'm just not understanding your question. I apologize. I'm not saying you're not asking it clearly.
My
I'm just not
question
hearing
is
what
this.
you're asking.
First question is, does the City of Lynn Haven issue the alcohol license? The answer is
We don't have the
no.
authority to do that.
I know you don't. But your resolution says in there that, and it's a city resolution, it says that issue of license. It should say ATF issues the license in conjunction with the city. The city, all it does is say, we say that they can do it on that property. I think it's a misleading statement. If you consider it not to be changed, fine, that's your prerogative.
My understanding of it, Mr. Walker, is the way I read it, the way I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Attorney, but is that you can't walk into the grocery outlet and purchase a beer or a six-pack of beer and then go into the parking lot and decide to have a party out there. That's what we were changing. That was our, is that?
Not questioning.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just not understanding where you're going with this. I don't get it, what you're saying.
Where I'm going with it is your verbiage in your resolution says, or gives me the indication that you issue the alcohol license.
Well, it's not the case, and
Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Could you ask if we could just point that out in the resolution?
Yeah.
I can't find it.
I think you're talking about where it says no license shall be granted for the sale of alcohol lessons?
Right.
Is that the section you're talking about? Okay.
It starts off with the paragraph says license.
Could you read
It's in your resolution.
Could you just read it, what you're asking? Because I don't think anybody on the board is clear of what you're asking. If you could just read to us what you're questioning. Is that possible?
Oh, I see what he...
I mean, you're telling us that it doesn't read the way that you think it should, so I'm asking you to read it to us.
My question was first, do you issue alcohol licenses? No.
No.
You don't. Okay. We satisfied that. But in your resolution here, 1044, in that paragraph, the first line it says license. And that resolution is your resolution. It's not ATF's resolution. It's not ATF who issues the license. And the explanation that I'm receiving here is all you're signing for is for the property of the permission. That's the only thing you're signing.
Okay, thank you for the question.
That's not what it says in the resolution.
I'm just wondering if the confusion here might be because the city issues business licenses.
Possibly.
And whether that language
Doesn't say
might
that.
be, the city won't issue a business license to a business, any business that is in a non-conforming land use, perhaps.
Does that answer your question?
That'll help if that's where you're going with it, if it's a business license.
I thought that was already said earlier, that I understood that was said earlier in the conversation. So I'm still...
This language has been part of the code since 1962.
Right.
So,
Okay.
if there's any if there's any confusion, hopefully it would have been resolved in the last 50 years, so.
If it's a business license, then you're referring to, fine.
Okay, I thought that was... I apologize. It was just my inability to understand what you were asking. I apologize. Okay, is there any other discussion from the public or the board? Yes, ma'am.
Get this right now. We've had so much discussion, I forget my original. So the only place in Lynn Haven, besides your own home, that you can consume alcohol is in a restaurant or a bar. Is that correct?
Unless we had a special commission approval like we have in the past when we've had events, like on Florida Avenue, when we've had the Spring Jazz Festival.
Well, that's my question, actually. Leads
Okay.
into your events on Florida Avenue.
And each time we've had an event that involved alcohol, it had to come before the commission for approval. It's
So
not...
that'll go forward in the future then? That each time that you want, each time that we have an event on Florida Avenue, you would go before the commission to ask for permission to have a beer tent or whatever?
That's my understanding, because it wouldn't be a restaurant or a bar, but Mr. Attorney, if you want to...
Yeah, that's an existing section of the code, and that's how that's been enforced for years, yes.
Okay. And is that for alcohol that is sold or just consumed?
The public consumption of alcohol is prohibited on the public streets of Lynn Haven.
Yes.
Except when there is a special permission
Right.
given by the city commission.
Right, yeah, open container law.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. That would apply both to the sale and the consumption of.
May I say something?
Please.
Let me see if I can help clarify this. Are you concerned that, like, for example, at Roberts Hall, when they have a wedding reception, if they're bringing in their own alcohol, that doesn't have anything to do with this?
Yeah, if they want to toast with champagne,
That's
may
right.
they still.
It doesn't have any...
They're not selling it.
Right, they're not
No, they're not
selling it.
selling it.
And that's the difference. That they're bringing it in themselves, they can enjoy it inside Roberts Hall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But I was also concerned about the Florida Avenue stuff, because we want to. I enjoyed the events on Florida Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or the public? Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes, sorry.
Commissioner Friend?
No.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so the motion is approved for item number 10. Item number 11 is second reading of ordinance number 1045, creating a new category in the ULDC for pharmacies and medical marijuana dispensaries, and action is required on this item. Mr. White, do you have that ordinance that you could read, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ordinance number 1045, an ordinance of the City of Lynn Haven, Florida, amending the Lynn Haven Unified Land Development Code, Section 1.07.00, acronyms and definitions, and Section 2.03.02, table of permitted uses to add pharmacies and medical marijuana dispensaries as a category of uses in the Unified Land Development Code, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing for an immediately effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? Mr. Walker?
Rich Walker, 1106 Michigan Avenue. I don't know what is up here, but I don't know why, from my opinion, it appears that you're headed for the destruction of the culture of this area. This is the last one, and the one before it, and the one before that, of it looks like a change in what we've been doing for 50 years. In 1045, I'd like to ask one question. Who is the applicant that is asking for this?
There is no applicant at this time asking for permission to open a dispensary for medical marijuana in Lynn Haven. What this ordinance, as we discussed at the last meeting, what it does is it lets Lynn Haven set the parameters of where we will locate a medical marijuana dispensary should a company that's approved by the state of Florida to dispense the medical marijuana want to come here. In other words, we decide where it will be rather than the state deciding by passing this ordinance. If we do nothing at any point in time, then the state can overrule our home rule and tell us where we will put the pharmacy, or not the pharmacy, the dispensary, excuse me.
Thank you for that. My question is, normally when we have a change to UDLC, it goes through the Planning Commission and through the Planning Office, and it's done by an applicant. That was my question. I don't see an applicant here. So what I'm getting at is the applicant is the City of Lynn Haven. So the City of Lynn Haven is brokering and going to be complacent in what we call illegal traffic drug use. To me, that's an opinion. The ULDC, as two gentlemen in the previous commission said, we will go to Lynn Haven because they're going to be the forefront. Well, why don't they go to Springfield? They don't want to go to Springfield. The people are wondering, or I am wondering, what's going on here? We reduced the distance between the alcohol consumption to parks, churches, schools, and we reduced the distance between the sale of alcohol. Now we're reducing the areas that we can put and have drugs. I don't understand where we're going with this. These things were put in the city by our forefathers to protect the children, the young adults, and even the adults. You're going ahead here and asking for permission to put in a commercial identity that is dealing with illegal drugs. The state, the federal government, the United States government, the Attorney General of the United States, FDA, DEA, FBI, and every one of them have declared this a Class 1 illegal drug. FDA does not approve it as a drug.
Mr. Walker, if you can bring it to a wind-up, because we're...
Yes, you like doing that. Okay.
No, I'm just saying, just bring it to your point.
I understand, but if somebody else, a developer or a staff officer, staff person who is a citizen also, comes up here, they can spend as long time they want explaining it to you. My question is this, to you.
Well, take it, I want you to take as much time as you need. So I don't want to be accused of cutting off a question, so go ahead.
My question to you is, as our elected officials, what are you trying to do to the small town, walkable town that you want to bring people to? If you authorize the sale of an illegal drug in an area here, you're doing exactly what it is. You're building a place, and they're going to come. The culture that comes with illegal drugs, and FDA has proved you can't control this. You can't control it. It's a proven fact. You cannot control it, even if it's given a prescription. I'll just give you one little indication. You go to Tallahassee now, and you get in line, and you pay $200, and you'll get a prescription for marijuana.
You can't get a prescription. You can only get a recommendation. There's no such thing as a prescription for marijuana.
Well, why don't you tell that to the doctors in Tallahassee?
Cannot get a prescription.
It's medical marijuana to get
Okay,
it.
you ask a question, so now I'd like to answer. Since you asked directly to the commission, I'll give you my opinion, my thoughts, and then I'll give the other commissioners a chance to do the same. On the first question regarding alcohol, I speak for me, but I think possibly because the rest of the commission voted to change to the state ordinance that they are in agreement with what I said. The people of Lynn Haven have indicated that they love having events and festivals, that they have agreed that they want us to have the eat, live, work, play community, with Florida Avenue being the center of the culture, with us being able to enjoy specific events. This ordinance, all that does, Florida Avenue is in proximity to some of our historical buildings as well as to Lynn Haven Elementary School. If we're having an event in the evening on Florida Avenue that is policed by our police department, approved by the commission, asked for by the residents, school is not in session at that time. And so it's just to make sure that we're not outside the law. That's where I believe that we came from with this particular ordinance, not trying to change the culture or trying to do anything detrimental to children or churches in Lynn Haven. The second question, you ask, why are we? The citizens of Lynn Haven, precincts 18 and 19, voted overwhelmingly, 68.6% in one and 65.9% in the other, that they wanted the availability of medical marijuana for those who are seriously ill, suffering from debilitating diseases, or in the last months or stages of cancer and undergoing chemotherapy. This is what the citizens of our two precincts said. Bay County went along with that as well. As far as why we went ahead and said yes, that we would allow a dispensary here if they wanted to come here, we did that because our voters asked us to. I can't speak for Springfield, but my job as mayor and our job as a commission is not to be the mother and father or the gatekeeper for our citizens. It's to do what we were elected and asked to do. I don't get to decide what's best for the citizens of Lynn Haven. I'm here to vote for what they ask me to vote for, to represent their wishes, the voice of the people. I feel that's what we've done. I think there's a great deal of confusion between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. If a person in this city is very ill, they've gone through, it takes almost 90 days to get a medical card to even ask for, to be able to come in to see a doctor who's been licensed by the state. And the word, they don't use prescribe. You're very correct that this is still considered, it's not a class 1, but a Schedule 1 drug. It is considered illegal by the federal government, but the state of Florida believes in home rule, and they've joined 39 other states in saying that, yes, we're going to allow people to access this very beneficial drug to help them through these debilitating diseases. So I make no apologies for voting for something that the residents of my town asked me to do by an overwhelming majority. So that's my answer. I don't know what anybody else has to say.
Well, I'd like to say something. I did vote yes for this, and I feel very strongly about it. But I don't want to get the cart before the horse. You referred to the two gentlemen that were here at the last meeting. It is not cheap, nothing cheap at all, about going out and either building a new building or, just starting a new business is extremely expensive. And the state laws are very strict. It's not, I don't think I could go out and open a medical marijuana dispensary. But there's so many regulations. This may never happen. We may never have one person come here and apply. So I don't want people to get hysterical over something that may never happen. And like the mayor said, we just simply passed it so that the state couldn't bring them in here and put them over next to the cafe or something. I don't want that either. At least the city will have, they have very strict regulations like pharmacies. So we will have the say on where they go and things of that nature. We're protecting ourselves more than anything for something that may never, ever happen here. That's. I know it's if, but that's how I feel about it.
I didn't mean to interrupt. Any other commissioners want to weigh in on that, or we're all good?
Mayor, just to say that I concur with you, with everything you said.
City Attorney?
I'll just add one thing, Mayor. One advantage to this ordinance is that the state says we can only regulate these just like pharmacies are, and in our current code, pharmacies don't have a specific category, and so they're just clumped in with retail commercial, and so a medical marijuana facility could go anywhere where there's retail commercial. By breaking this out as two separate categories, even though we've kept the uses the same, it gives the city the ability to change those designations in the future. So.
Does that help at all?
I got a good idea of where you're coming from. But to answer just one thing, you say it never could happen. They said that about World War II.
Okay, is there any other discussion from the public? Okay, Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes. And so item number 11 stands approved. Moving to new business, just a couple more items. Discussion and possible action for the approval of the preliminary plat approval for the CVS store at the northeast corner of Ohio Avenue, State Road 77, and East 14th Street, State Road 390. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and so item 13 is as well, so let the attorney swear in any people.
Yes, ma'am. Items number 12 and 13 are quasi-judicial hearings of City of Lynn Haven. If anybody plans on presenting any testimony before the commission, please go ahead and stand and raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. And if any commissioner has had any ex parte communication regarding item number 12 or 13, please go ahead and disclose that on the record at this time.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is a preliminary plat approval application. The project is the CVS pharmacy, and the applicant is the CVS pharmacy. The agent, Jonathan Cantanzano, or Casey Genovese of Linfield Hunter and Junius Inc. Jonathan is here tonight. Parcel numbers 10088-000-000, 10086-020-000, 10086-010-000, 10090-000-000, and 10091-000-000. The location is the northeast corner of Ohio Avenue, State Road 77, and East 14th Street, otherwise known as State Road 390. The land use is commercial, and the size of the properties, all those combined parcels, is 2.06 acres. The current use is commercial and residential, and the applicant wishes to move the CVS store to the north due to the widening of State Road 390. You may recall that a couple of months ago, probably about 3 months ago, 2-3 months, we had the land use change on some of these parcels. Basically what's happening is with the widening of State Road 390, CVS is going to be losing some of its frontage on 390. And so they have put together a land assembly where they are purchasing some of the properties to the north of them, the restaurant on Ohio Avenue and 2 houses on Pennsylvania. They asked for a land use change, which you all approved and which the state also approved. So those properties have a commercial land use, and this is basically the replat. So this is bringing all those parcels in together in the form of the preliminary plat. This identifies those parcels that we're talking about. And this is the aerial. You can see on the aerial, can you see how the identified property in the red is way north of where some of that CVS currently is? And that is because the property appraiser has already carved out the taking by the state for 390. The preliminary plat is in your packets. There is going to be a, I don't know if you remember, but there was a right-of-way abandonment for some of that old railroad right-of-way that went through the middle. And the city has been granted an easement, a maintenance or a drainage easement, although not a maintenance because CVS are responsible for maintenance. The city is not going to be responsible for any of the stormwater facilities. If you have any specific questions, Jonathan is here to answer those questions. We have had it reviewed by the contracted city surveyor and also by the city attorney, and they are good with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone on the board have questions for Ms. Richard on either 12 or 13? Is there a motion for approval of item number 12?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for item number 12, the approval of the preliminary plat approval. If there's been no discussion from the board, is there any discussion or questions from the public on the plat approval? There appears to be none. Mr. White, would you please call the roll for item number 12?
Commissioner Barnes?
Aye.
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes, so item number 12 is approved. And then item number 13, is there a motion for acceptance of the development order application for the CVS store?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from the board? Any discussion or questions from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Is this addressing number 13?
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pam Eisenberg. The property that I'm talking about is at 1300 Pennsylvania Avenue. As you've heard, 2 of 3 houses are being purchased by CVS. House number 3 is at 1300 Pennsylvania Avenue. My concerns are what I would like to make sure that CVS and the board look into is stormwater drainage. Sometimes the corner of 1300 and Pennsylvania Avenue has issues with drainage. It's gotten pretty high there, so I wanted to make sure that that was being considered. Plus, the elevation of the CVS has been concerned to me. The property is often built up, and the house that we're living, or the property at 1300 was built in 1970. It's on what I'd call base level. I'm afraid it's going to look like it's in a hole. Also, a privacy fence at the completion of the project. If the house is there and CVS is next door, a large privacy fence. And the other thing that I asked Jonathan too was, why did they buy 2 houses and not 3? If they bought 1300, it's on the corner, and it would give them access to 13th Street, not only Pennsylvania, but 13th Street, and it's only 90 feet long. So those were the concerns that I hope are being addressed. I've talked to Mr. Baker too, and I just want to make sure that the property is protected as more building and drainage is being considered. Just please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I do believe that with the stormwater study that's going on right now, and with our new city managers being particularly aggressive about protective measures with stormwater in particular, I think that that's going to be addressed without question. So, is there any other, did you want to say something, sir? I'm sorry.
Good evening. Jonathan Catanzano with Linfield Hunter and Genius Engineers. Just to touch on a couple things, I guess by stormwater related, but state and local requirements don't allow you to increase the runoff. So we're proposing a lot larger detention pond in the front on the intersection of, I guess, 390 and 77, and also in response to the privacy fence, there's actually going to be, I guess, a give or take 3-foot retaining wall against her property to ensure that we don't drain on top of her, and there will also be a 6-foot wooden fence on top of that to provide some privacy. And I guess in reference to the elevation, one of the main reasons that we are raising the site is, I guess, to allow for storm drainage and also to meet the city's requirement of 1 foot above the crown of the road for the basement or the finished floor elevation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything else, Ms. Richard? Are you good?
I think the only thing that I can add is just to reassure that, as Jonathan said, the state requirements today require that a developer keep all of their stormwater on site. So, we're not going to say that if the lady's property floods at the moment, their project isn't going to stop her property from flooding the way that it always has, but none of their water is going to go onto her property.
Okay, thank you. Any questions further from the commission?
Mayor, if I may.
Sure.
So you're raising the elevation 3 feet off the crown of the road, correct?
No, sir. No, sir. The highest adjacent crown of the road is about 17 and a half, and we're going to be at 19. So it'll be about 1.5 feet above the highest.
Then how are you going to have a 3-foot retaining wall between your property and hers?
That's because we have, I guess, that elevation is along 77, not Pennsylvania. So I guess Pennsylvania is a little lower than, so that's where you get the difference. And also the CVS building is closer to the rear of the property, so it doesn't allow for as much grading out, per se.
And then my next question is for Amanda. Can we require him to build the fence in the development order?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would like to see that happen to make sure.
You can make that, they're proposing to do it, but to make sure
Sure.
that it's done, you can make that a condition of the DO. Oh gosh, there was something else I was going to tell you, and it's just gone. I wanted to make you aware, because I did have it on my screen, but my screen's gone, that this project's going to be taking place in 2 stages. And so there's going to be a temporary stormwater pond, which is going to be kind of on Ohio Avenue, because what they're going to do is build the new building before they demolish the old building. So just so that there's no confusion when people ask you what's going on, they're going to be building the new building, and there's going to be a temporary stormwater pond on Ohio, and then when they demolish the building that's there at the moment, that is where the new stormwater pond is going to be, and the building is actually going to be smaller than the existing building. The new building is going to be 9,000 square feet, and the existing one is 11,000 something square feet. So just in case you wonder what's going on with construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Just jokingly, is there any way we can save the fishnet? Just kidding. I miss the fishnet already.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, Mr. White, would you please call the roll? Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I made the original motion, correct?
Yes.
Is it okay for me to amend that motion?
Absolutely.
I would like to amend that motion to require.
Well, you have to withdraw or just amend?
Withdraw, and then the second, and yeah.
Okay, so if you'll withdraw your motion.
Okay, I'd like to withdraw my motion.
I would draw a second.
Okay. Now,
So then I would like to make the motion that we approve the development order pending that they have to build the privacy fence to protect the lady's property. No, he said he was going to, but there's no reason that he couldn't down the road change his mind and not build it unless we force it in the development order. So not that I'm not questioning the gentleman's integrity, but things happen and change, and I want to make sure this lady's protected.
Okay, so there's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Mr. White, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Russell?
Yes.
Commissioner Friend?
Yes.
Commissioner Tender?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnes? Aye. Mayor Anderson?
Yes, and so that item number 13 stands approved, and we're now at our last item, which is public commentary. You may speak on any topic that you wish to address the commission about. Mr. Miller.
Leon Miller, 1508 Mississippi Avenue. I'm kind of directing this to the city manager. East and west on 17th Street and 77. It began to now that cars are back crossed over to Winn-Dixie over there trying to turn. Where are we at with that delayed turn signal?
I got with our city engineer, and we got with DOT and Bay County. That is done purposely, and it's done by sensors on down 77. DOT and the county wants to make sure traffic flows more on 77 than some streets. And what happens is they got it timed to do exactly what it does today. And they have no reason to change it, is what we were told.
Not even errors for east and west turn?
Didn't get into the errors, but I got into that. So when they said that, I apologize. I'll go back and ask for errors.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Anyone else have anything that you'd like to discuss with the commission? Thank you all for coming. It's been a long meeting, and it's been a productive meeting. Okay. Meeting is adjourned.